Hello, and welcome to Insightful Conversations with your host, Three Principles practitioner, Adey-Jones. Join her each week as she welcomes some of the world's leading Three Principles teachers and practitioners who share how this understanding has dramatically improved the quality of their lives and the lives of those they work with.
Thank you so much for joining us here today. I'm so thrilled to have as my guest the wonderful Dr. Judy Sedgeman. For more than 3 decades, Judy has been a teacher, mentor, and consultant in the Three Principles. In addition to her work at Sedgeman Consulting, she's also a consultant for the Center for Sustainable Change. Judy also offers mental health mentoring to individual clients through her local Women's Resource Center, as well as innate health groups for veterans through several nonprofits. Her life's passion has been to awaken creativity, resilience, and well-being in people through the understanding of the Three Principles. Welcome, Judy, and thank you so much for joining me today.
Well, thank you. I'm delighted to be here.
Yeah, I feel very lucky. I have you twice in 2 days in a row here. So just to give a little background for our listeners, we are collaborating with our wonderful friend and colleague, Jackie Ford, on an up-and-coming event on Unashamable. It's Unashamedly Human, and that's going to be on her one-woman global platform. So we just had such an incredible conversation yesterday, sharing our stories of shame and, basically how the principles have helped us sort of leave all that in the past. I mean, sometimes it revisits, but it doesn't have the stranglehold it used to have in my life for sure. Yeah. So you have such an incredible wealth of stories and knowledge and things to share from the people you've worked with. So I was wondering if you could share how the Three Principles have impacted some of the women you've worked with.
Well, right now, I work a lot with women who have been in situations of abuse. And up until fairly recently, I was working with women who were prostituted, mostly women who had been taken over by a pimp and were very much prisoners, essentially, of that life. So, this is an area that is near and dear to my heart because mostly these people don't get a lot of positive mental health information. I feel as though the principles are such an answer for them because they don't have the resources or the capacity to be in therapy for long periods of time. They have to receive help and be helped.
Yeah.
So it's been a quite a journey, and I think I'm especially touched by the girls that I worked with who had been in life of prostitution, because when they would come to us, they were usually pretty hopeless. Mostly they didn't know what was going to happen to them. Most of them started as runaways. In one case, one of the girls had been sold.
Oh my goodness.
For drugs.
Yeah.
And so she ended up on the street because her mother needed the money for drugs, and that's how that happened. But a lot of times they thought they were being helped by somebody who turned out to be, their abuser.
Yeah.
And so they, after years of this life, they'd be rescued by the organization that I was working with. And what would happen is they believed that they were destroyed and ruined, and they were very ashamed of the things they had done, even though they didn't have a choice. And so they were suffering and felt like, what's the point? I know you're trying to help me. You want me to have a different life, but I'm beyond hope.
Yeah.
So that, for me, the thrill was to be able to tell them, what the past is.
Yeah.
That the past is gone and can't change it, but you don't ever have to think about it again.
Yeah.
As I told one of the girls, you had a really bad job and you're never going to go for that job again. Don't worry about it. Now you're going to get a better job.
Yeah. I love that. That's so fun. I love your compassion and humor in dealing with this subject.
Well, for some of them, they haven't laughed in a long time.
Yeah.
And it feels really good for them to finally laugh, and they feel like they shouldn't laugh. They start, sometimes you say something funny and you see they kind of want to laugh, but they don't, because they think, oh gosh, yeah, I'm not supposed to be laughing. Look at the tragedy that my life is.
Yeah. Oh.
Just even making it easy for them to laugh at themselves and to be able to look back and see that it's all innocent. They didn't mean to end up where they ended up, and they're just lucky to be saved and be where they are.
Yeah. That's so beautiful. I mean, that's what is so amazing about the principles. I mean, I was in long-term therapy for myself, and it definitely benefited me immensely. But just the freedom that the understanding of the principles gives you, just the sort of knowing that we innocently did things. We did the best we could with the thinking we had at that time, and it doesn't make us bad people.
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah. And you can't, and I think where the shame comes in for people that have been in lives that are less than desirable is that they know they didn't choose it, but they feel like, well, I should have been able to get out of it, or I should have escaped, or I should have, refused, forgetting that they couldn't, like some of it was with a gun to their head.
Yeah.
And and the should haves and the regrets and all the personal, like it's my fault, I was a bad person, or this wouldn't have happened to me. Those are thoughts that, even though they're very human, they're just illusionary thoughts that come and go. It's just like it's no different from, I think of my grandson when he was little. I found him, we never hit him, but we always put him in timeout if something went wrong. And I stumbled into him sitting in the timeout chair in my dining room. And I said, did you put yourself in timeout? Why are you in timeout? And I was heading for the kitchen. He said, oh, you'll find out soon enough. And I went in the kitchen and he had spilled juice on the floor.
Oh,
and I ran out to the dining room and I said, honey, that's an accident. That's not a timeout thing. And he says, oh, okay. Well, do I get credit for the timeout thing?
How old was he?
He was about 7, I guess.
Oh my God, very bright.
He was very cute. But the thing is that's kind of like, in the first thing he spilled the juice and he went right into guilt and shame.
Yeah.
For something that was just anybody could do that.
Yeah. That's so funny.
We have to realize it's all our own thinking. We make up stuff and then feel bad about it. But we are always doing the best we can.
Yeah. But until we know that, I mean, as I was sharing with you yesterday, I had story after story that proved I was a bad person, or that I was, shameful, and you God, the freedom that the principles brought me, and just being able to sort of step back and go, oh my God, that was a story that I just kept perpetuating, looking for evidence to back it up and prove it to be true. And when you know that, you can actually just let that go. And, not to deny that some things didn't happen in the past. They did for sure. But we don't have to carry them into our future and have them define us. No. So, yeah, and you also mentioned yesterday, which I found fascinating, and I wanted to bring this up too, with the veterans that you worked with. Because, I mean, we were talking about that, which it totally brought tears to my eyes when you shared. So can you share some of that with us?
Sure. Well, I work with veterans with PTSD. And for a lot of them, I think we have kind of a common thought that PTSD is from the horrors, the things they saw, the way war is, the way war plays itself out. But really the people who suffer the most, in my experience, are people, it's not so much what they saw or what they understood to be the nature of war, it's what they did personally.
Yeah.
They could have seen a whole village blown up, that's one thing, but if they were the person that planted the bomb and lit the fuse, then they suffer and suffer and suffer. And especially when children and families are involved, because most often these people, think of their own families. And even if they're too young to have a family and children, they grew up in a family, so they think of their brothers and sisters and their parents. And so they suffer because, in the fog of war, they killed a child, or they, maimed a mother or something. And that eats away at them. And that's the kind of thing you can't you can't unthink it, you can't change it. And a lot of the programs that try very hard to reframe the memory or make it better, you can't make it better. But you can make it fit sort of the tapestry. It's a thread in the tapestry of your whole life, and see that in context, that happened, and you regret it, and you can feel that you want to make up for it somehow. And a lot of them end up doing service work that will kind of make up for things that they said and did during war. But to suffer from it is to deny the people you love and the life you have right now. And suffering doesn't change it.
No, exactly.
It becomes a self-indulgence. It really is. It becomes, I can't stop thinking about myself, and I can't stop thinking about, my pain and my emotion. And I think that just for them to be able to forgive themselves, and forgiveness doesn't mean you decide it was okay to do that.
No, exactly.
A lot of people may say, well, if I forgive myself, then I'm saying it was okay. No, you're just saying, I can't change it, but I can live differently, and I can regret it and move on.
Yeah.
I know that if I had been thinking differently, or if I had a different opportunity, I might have done differently. I did what happened.
Yeah.
And I've seen that be so freeing for people when they understand the concept of, truly forgiving themselves, going deep inside and realizing I'm a spiritual human being, and the spirit is unbroken, but the mind makes mistakes sometimes. And
well, yeah, especially in that environment where they're trained to do that. They're trained to not be humans. They're trained to, be merciless. And then all of a sudden, you were saying they come back into society and they're expected to be back with their families, their wives, their children, and they're overwhelmed.
Yeah, and most of them have a hard time talking to their families about it. And that's another thing I think that we could help a lot of people by talking to the families of veterans and saying, don't pry, don't push them, don't try to make them talk about the past. It's not going to help them, build love in the moment and move forward with your family, and just be grateful you have each other now. Because so often I think that, we're kind of, as a society, we've got the idea that you have to get things out.
Yeah.
You really need to talk about it. And that's like the worst thing you can do.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It's so funny. I mean, that's just the old model of therapy, though, isn't it? It's just, I just know for me, it was almost like, okay, I'm so damn bored of hearing myself tell this story anymore. I'm just going to stop. I'm just going to let it go. But, the thing is, I probably could have let it go many, many years before if I'd understood about, the nature of thought. And so, that's really, really interesting. It's so funny, too, touching on the subject of, guilt versus shame. Can you talk a bit about that, too? Because...
Yeah. Well, to me, guilt is not as personal. So guilt is, I feel really bad that I did that and made it right. I feel guilty, and when I think about it, I feel bad that it happened. But shame is, I am flawed, I'm bad, I'm damaged, I'm not like everybody else, I'm subhuman. Those are the feelings that go along with shame. It's really a deeply personal experience for people. And you can't sort of apologize your way out of shame. And that's why shame is such a painful experience for people. It just is it drags you down, because it separates you from humanity. It makes you feel like that, other people, if people really knew deep down how terrible I am, I wouldn't have any friends, And when we get lost in that within ourselves, it's psychologically very exhausting and very painful and very limiting.
Yeah.
Just being able to bring it to the surface and acknowledge it. I mean, with clients, I have to bring it up. Nobody ever says, I want to talk about my shame.
Yeah.
Because they don't.
Yeah.
And I have to say, is there something that you think about that has caused you to change your thinking about who you are? Is there something you don't have to tell me details. You don't even have to tell me what it is. Just, is there?
Yeah.
And, people will, usually they'll cry, they'll say yes. And sometimes they tell me and sometimes they don't.
Mm-hmm.
And then I can talk to them about how the formless and the form, that the spirit is the formless, beautiful, pure energy of life. And they always have the chance to start again with that energy. They can create a whole new experience of life every moment. And that anything that they have created in the past, because it always goes through your own mind, and you can make mistakes, and you can misunderstand, and you can skew your own thinking. But that those are accidents of life. They happen to everybody, and there's nobody that hasn't done things they wish they hadn't done. You can't get through life without that kind of thing. And just to humanize, to bring them back into the sense that they're human beings, and there is no such thing as a human being who's broken.
Yeah.
That we can't be broken. We can be, we can think we are, but deep down inside, that fresh start is always there. So, I honestly, I think shame that's what calls upon you to forgive yourself, but also forgiving yourself is just rejoining the world, rejoining humanity, recognizing we're all in it together, and nobody's perfect. Nobody has a perfect life.
And also for me, what I realized, what I love about the principles was that to realize that, the thoughts that I had weren't personal to me, that we all have these crazy thoughts. We all, we're all in it. We're doing the best we can as, spiritual beings having a human experience, but there are going to be crazy thoughts, and to have shame around them or think, oh my God, I must be the only one thinking this or feeling this way. It's so liberating to know that no, they're just up for grabs for anybody,
Yeah. That's a big problem with teenagers who think about suicide. It frightens them.
Yes.
Because they think nobody else, I'm the only one, even though they know that's, intellectually they know, they've read, they understand. But at the time that they're having those thoughts, they think, I am so flawed. There's something deeply wrong with me. I'll never get out of this. And, most of the time, one of the things I talk about is, no one gets through teenage years without having that thought.
Yeah, exactly.
People get, into these emotional highs and low, which is just part of growing up. And at the low points, we've all had those thoughts. And most people just don't act on them.
Yeah.
And you always have the choice of what to do with your thoughts. You don't have to act on it. You can have it and realize it's a really horrifying thought. Probably a good idea not to hang around with it for too long.
Yeah.
And it's such a relief to them to find out they're not alone.
Yeah. And I think particularly right now with social media and so much cyberbullying and things like that, and I think public humiliation, public shame, or people ganging up on each other, I would say it's very difficult for young people right now.
Right.
You hear of the young boy Clemente, I think his name was, that was videotaped and then exposed on social media for being in a relationship with another boy, and it was too much for him to bear, and he decided to commit suicide. That's tragic to me.
It is.
Yeah,
It
absolutely.
is. But when you're a teenager, everything's really dramatic anyway. That's the most part about it.
Yeah.
It's like it ups the drama. I remember my grandson telling me, I think he was about 16 at the time, and he said, it just seems like, he's an artist, so he talks in art terms, and he said, it just seems like the colors are so vivid, and it's like the dark ones are so upsetting, and the light ones are so uplifting, and everything's bigger than it used to be, and he said, it must be just something you got to go through.
Yeah, that's so true.
He was really describing the drama of teenage thinking.
Yeah. I remember one of my sons going through a terrible situation where a friend of his died, and he was only 13, and he didn't have the capacity to know he blamed himself in the sense that he thought if he'd only just done this, if they'd walked a bit later when the car had gone by, and he just to process that at such a young age, it was pretty overwhelming for him. Thank goodness he's, in his early 20s now, and can see things that, that didn't mean anything about him. Mm-hmm. But it's amazing what we do to blame ourselves for, situations in life.
Well, I think one of the joys of understanding thinking is he realized that kind of the only thing we really understand is our own thoughts.
Yeah.
So in a sense, we're always thinking about ourselves, and it just to be able to step back and realize that's my thought, mm-hmm. and there may be no other person in the world that shares that thought. It may be something no one's ever thought about me, and no one ever will.
Yeah.
I'm making it up. I'm just making it all up, and as I make it up, it looks really real to me.
Yeah.
But it's not there. There's no objective. Any person who looks at me right now is going to think the same thing.
Yeah.
And I think this is where, especially as we're growing up and without any understanding of thought, people get very frightened by what's in their own mind because they think, oh my gosh, if I'm thinking that, people know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, exactly. And I'm just thinking about, I think it was news to me when somebody actually sort of said to me, no, people are actually usually thinking about their own lives and their own things. They're not bothered with your life and what you're doing or saying. But you feel that, when you're younger, that you're under this microscope or this like sort of magnifying glass and everybody's looking in and, you're sort of being exposed. So...
Yeah, it's funny. When I was a young teenager, and I was in debate club, and I went to a debate, and I was wearing a navy blue shoe and a black shoe. They were the same shoes, but I had them in navy and black, and so I just picked up the wrong ones, pair. And I was horrified. In the middle of the debate, I looked down and realized that my shoes didn't match. Now, mind you, I'm standing behind a podium anyway.
That's
all I could think about. I lost my train of thought. My team lost the debate. And at the end of it, somebody said to me, "What happened to you? We were counting on you. We're supposed to carry us over the finish line, and all of a sudden you just fell apart." And I said, "I realized I was wearing shoes that didn't match." Oh. And everybody agreed that was just so sad, because we were all teenagers, right? Oh yeah, so that's really bad. I think about it now, and I think, I bet there wasn't another person in the room that even noticed that, because nobody thinks about your shoes.
Exactly. Oh, that's so funny.
But that's the crazy things we think. We find fault with ourselves for things that nobody else could care about at all.
Exactly. Yeah, it's unbelievable. Yeah. So, what would you? I just wonder. We're actually coming down on our time, but tell me, what. I know that you mentioned yesterday there's a few areas where you really feel that the principles could really benefit society right now. Where would you say some of those areas are?
Well, of course, the one that I see most clearly is that we have a whole generation of children that are lost, refugee children all over the world. Mm-hmm. All these children living in camps, and their homes have been destroyed, lost their families, or lost a great percentage of their families, and they're not getting a proper education. They're not getting, the kind of normal childhood life that people have when they have, the place they sleep in and the place they call home and the parents they're used to. And I feel that those children desperately need to understand their own power as the thinkers of their own thoughts, their own ability as they grow older to shape their lives, and not to be defined by the experience of war and chaos that the world is facing right now.
Yeah.
Children are naturally resilient, but as they get older, the way we're set up now, we kind of train them to be upset about things that have happened to them.
Yeah, totally.
And if we could just get the principles into those situations, it would make such a difference, I think, in the world. That these children would be empowered to be the creator of their own lives, no matter what happened in their childhood, no matter where they find themselves, that they have the wherewithal within them to see life for themselves and to create the life they want, despite their childhood, despite all of this. And I think that otherwise, I think we're going to have an awful lot of trouble in the world, because there's millions of people whose lives are unlike anything we've ever seen before.
Yeah.
All over the world. They're people that have been, driven out of Africa by famine, and driven out of the Middle East by war, and driven, from one country to another by fear and, the upheaval. And the adults, I don't know what's going to happen to the adults, and I don't know that there's time, but there's we have to reach to the children.
Yeah, that's so beautiful, and I'm really going to take that on board and look and see what we can do. Certainly within, some of the newer practitioners that are coming in. You, as we call you, the first generation teachers, did some incredible work in the world, and I think there's a lot to be. I know there's some wonderful people, Mara Gleason and Olson, and Brooke Weldon Rees, and there's some amazing things being done in the world. But as you say, that's an area that hasn't been addressed yet, and we have it right here on our doorstep. We could be doing something right here. So. Anyway, I can't thank you enough for joining me today. Oh, and I need to mention the up and coming. It's going to be a online workshop that we're going to be doing, as I mentioned, with Jackie Ford, and it's going to be called Unashamedly Human, and that's going to be on November. I think it's 16, 17. It's on the flyer there. And then later next spring, we're going to be coming to you in Florida and doing a live workshop. So we're very
so exciting.
I know, we're very excited.
Looking forward to you working with you and Jackie Dell. I really enjoy your company and your wisdom, and thank you for letting me be a part of it.
Oh, thank you for joining us. All right, lovely. Well, thank you, and we will speak soon.
Okay, thank you.
Bye-bye.